Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. How's it going?
Here as pause. Usual, maybe. I don't know. Always. Most of the time. I don't know. We're here as frequently. Here as every Monday. It's Michigan Monday. Tony, this was another week where I watched the Michigan game knowing what happened and still couldn't believe they got out of there with a win at the end. Even knowing the final score, this was 2 games in a row where it was basically the Breaking Bad, they can't keep getting away with this meme. That was basically Michigan football the last 2 weeks.
I went into the weekend thinking this is going to be just a really boring game where Michigan just suffocates Minnesota and there's really nothing that we learned from it. And maybe Alex Orji at quarterback takes a bit of a step. But then, you see them get out to, Michigan wins 27-24, spoiler, but they get out to like a 24 or 21-3 halftime lead. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's what I was expecting. And then at some point, I don't know where we were, you start getting score updates and it's like, and now Minnesota has an onside kick and we're listening to it in the parking garage, waiting to head into Spartan Stadium and listening to the Michigan broadcast call of a controversial, and maybe we could just start off with that, the controversial onside kick call that the Gophers were flagged for an offsides call, in which the Michigan broadcast crew said there were at least 2 guys offside on that one. You look at then I watched the broadcast version. I don't know, it wasn't Peacock, but I had it on DVR. Watched the broadcast, and you could see there's a helmet over the line. I'm not sure I've ever seen it called that closely before. I know they take special extra care on the onside kick situations, but that one was a surprise. Well, can't say it surprised me, but that was certainly a call to make.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I guess maybe technically there was a helmet over the line.
Maybe.
The main broadcast angle, I pulled a still from it where the guy has kicked the ball and everyone is clearly, to me, on or behind the line. It's one of those things where maybe it's correct. I don't know how watching it live you could possibly have made that call. It's like a little bit like the Florida State, the Miami, Virginia Tech, Hail Mary at the end of that game where you very clearly have no idea. Like, this happened way too closely for you to have made a call definitively one way or the other. In that moment, I think you have to be so sure that you're right about the call. If the guy's a step over the line, yeah, absolutely. And that materially impacts the play. Even if the guy's helmet is slightly over the line, I mean, you're so sure that you're going to throw that flag. And I mean, that was the game deciding call, because if they don't throw that flag, Minnesota has the ball on the Michigan, 36 after having marched down the field to score a touchdown right before that. And they've got less than 2 minutes to play, and they're going to be able to run out the clock and at least kick a field goal to tie potentially. And if not, take the, win. So, yeah, that was one where maybe I did not watch the full broadcast. I watched sort of a condensed replay, and I didn't see the angle you're talking about. I just saw the wide angle, and it sure did not look like anyone was over the line. You said that the radio guys were saying, "Oh yeah, 2 guys are way over the line," which no, I don't think that was the case at all.
Blatant and clear offsides on the onside kick. But again, it never should have gotten to that point. And maybe that's the larger issue that we can talk about throughout the show, is that the Michigan defense is wearing down throughout the course of the game because there's just so much on them to perform throughout the game. And we should say they were without Will Johnson, starting corner. They were without Josiah Stewart, starting defensive end, edge rusher. So you're missing 2 of your top 5 defenders, I would say, in this game. And we saw it against Texas, where they would wear down over the course of a drive. And last week against USC, the Michigan offense was outscored 21-7 in the second half. This week, they were outscored, the Michigan offense, 21-6 in the second half. And I think a lot of that is due to the defense wearing down, the offense giving them nothing. And now they're just struggling to stay ahead and keep things in front of them, while also trying to create the kind of havoc that leads to shorter fields. And boy, howdy, did they get some short fields in this one. They had a touchdown drive of, I believe, 16 yards and a touchdown drive of 11 yards in this one for Michigan. And it's another thing, one of those things, and I wrote down here in my notes, it's kind of like last week, if we just take what the Michigan defense gives you and you don't give them anything, Michigan is going to have a hard time beating you. You just can't keep giving them. Now, Michigan's defense is making plays, and the special teams is making plays with a blocked punt, kind of like Ohio State's defense was making plays against Michigan State to secure some short fields or secure long fields and stop long drives. So give them credit. But if you don't turn the ball over, you have an opportunity to beat Michigan.
I think this is a game where last week they got a win, and it was a game that I had kind of written in there as a loss. And so that increased my expectation for their win total this year. This was a game where they won the game, and it decreased my expectation for their win total for the year. Because, yeah, they were without Josiah Stewart. Yes, they were without Will Johnson. They did get Colston Loveland back, which gave them at least the faintest semblance of a passing game. So they got, you got one guy back, you lose two guys. So I look at this team, and you look at their schedule moving forward, and they're going to beat Northwestern. The second most likely game to win is probably Michigan State. That's, I would say, it's at home, so you're probably going to win that game, but that's a rivalry where weird things happen. The Minnesota game was probably, of your remaining games going into last week, probably your second easiest win of the season left on the schedule. And it turned into if the officials make this one particular call, maybe you won't have a game-tying field goal attempt or a potential game-winning touchdown that you have to defend against in the final minutes. They are playing with such fine margins. It's just, this is a team that feels like right now they can win in one of two ways. And it's, if you get like 3 50-yard runs, you can barely escape, and you get a pick six from Will Johnson, you can barely escape against USC. And if you get two drive, you get a fumble, a really nice rip out fumble by Zeke Berry, give you a 16-yard touchdown drive, and you also get a block punt for an 11-yard touchdown drive, and Minnesota misses a field goal, and you get the call at the end of the game. You can just barely escape against what is probably the second easiest team on your Big Ten schedule. That I think really, I know Michigan fans every week say, well, we keep winning, and so you guys are just haters. I mean, really, truly, honestly, looking at the schedule, I'll read through the schedule real quickly. How many games are Michigan fans feeling great about right now? Like, they just put it in the win column right now. This weekend, they go to Washington. So it's a West Coast trip. Yes, it's a Washington team that just lost to Rutgers. Yes, 100% understood. Yes, they're not that good this year. It's a cross-country flight. How great are you feeling? Going to Illinois to Champaign to play Illinois. Michigan State at home, Oregon at home, Indiana on the road. How are you feeling about that one right now? Northwestern at home, and then the trip to Columbus at the end of the year. Yeah, they are 4-1 right now. So that's great. That's better than I probably expected them to be at this point. But the 4-1 is, you beat Fresno State in a game that was close very late. Fresno State just gave up 50-something points to someone. They just got absolutely drubbed last week, and they lost 59-14 to, I don't remember who it was, but someone. Texas got killed in the Texas game. Arkansas State was a big lead and then kind of fell apart at the end to make it look a little closer than it was. USC was a big lead, and then you fell apart and barely survived. Minnesota was a big lead, and you fell apart and you barely survived. It feels like they are, they're the cartoon character hanging on to the edge of the cliff by their fingers at just about all of these games. And these aren't the hard games on their schedule. it's about to get harder. And yeah, you're going to get Will Johnson back at some point. We assume you're going to get Josiah Stewart back at some point soon. But the margins are so fine right now that Colston Loveland goes out and your passing game just evaporates. And Will Johnson goes out and Max Brosmer is suddenly, lighting you up. And I look at Max Brosmer and I go, he's so much better than any quarterback on the Michigan roster. How does Minnesota have an FCS transfer who is light years better than anyone on the Michigan roster? That should never happen.
No, I just looked. Washington opened as a 1-point favorite this week against Michigan. Oof. So that's a 7:30 Eastern kick on NBC, I believe. So I look forward to that one. Yes, NBC. Of course, 4:30 local, so it'll be nice and sunny, assuming it's not raining in the Seattle area. And why ever would it? The Michigan winning with the running game, this was a slog for them. This was not easy for them. Kalel Mullings, 111 yards rushing on 24 carries, had a 27-yard touchdown, scored twice. One of the hardest running dudes in the nation. And if they didn't have him, they would be completely lost this year. But he gets them tough yards because that's what they need, because the offensive line is not necessarily holding up their end of the bargain at times. But when they block it well and the defense loses leverage, he's out the gate. And that's what happened on their first touchdown. And they were up pretty quick, and Minnesota didn't give up. But like I said, the defense is getting worn down. I think you're seeing that. I thought Ernest Hausman played a pretty good game. He was very active. Other linebacker, Jayshawn Barham. Just to give you an idea of the kind of season he's had, I think this was like 3 consecutive plays. He had a personal foul, and then it was a tackle for loss, and then he missed the running back. He just completely whiffed. So like that's kind of what he's been this year. So you never really know what you're going to get. The potential is high, but the Minnesota running attack, 38 yards, and the Michigan defense, I haven't looked, but I'm sure they're near the top of the nation in run defense. But you look at what one of the interesting things that I saw in this one is how much they threw to Darius Taylor, Minnesota's running back. They were just checking down. And that's why I also wrote, if you just take what Michigan's defense gives you, it may be enough. If you can just, this is one of those games where field goals do help. Just getting points on the board, securing and ending every possession with a catch. Because if you can get 30 points is all it would take to beat Michigan. 31 basically, because they haven't done better than that this year. But if you just dump it off, don't get crazy, don't hold the ball too long because you're probably going to get hit. And Darius Taylor, the running back, was targeted 14 times, 10 catches, only 52 yards, but it was an extension of the running game. So Taylor rushes for 36 yards, gets 52 yards in receptions. They used him very well. Daniel Jackson, the wide receiver, had maybe the most insane catch. There's like a video game catch where he caught it with his back arm as the ball was going by him in the end zone. It's like a little matrix glitch that stuff isn't supposed to happen. So Minnesota was making plays, not enough to get the win. But while I'm just rambling on all of this, I will say, Tom, this is probably the best. Well, this is definitely the best Alex Orji has looked as a passer, going 10 of 18 for 86 yards with 1 touchdown and 1 incompletion. He completed a couple of passes downfield. He completed one that was 16 yards downfield. So that was a new record for him. And as we talked about on one of our pregame shows, there was we looked at some prop bets because you can do so in the state of Michigan. And Alex Orji's passing total was, I think, 81 yards. And he went over that by 5. So congrats to all of those who cashed out. But the one thing with Alex Orji right now, he can run, he can get away. What I'm noticing is there's no scramble drill with him. He's just looking to get yards. He may be looking downfield, but he's not really making plays on the run in the passing game. He's just getting upfield and making plays in the running game. And I think the next step he needs to be able to take is the passing on the run, but I don't know if that's going to happen anytime this season because some of his throws in the pocket are way off. So I can only imagine what happens when he gets off the platform.
Well, that was what made J.J. McCarthy so dangerous last year. It wasn't that J.J. McCarthy was running for 150 yards on you. It was that he was using his legs, moving the pocket, extending the play, and then throwing off balance, sometimes dangerously, sometimes late over the middle, sometimes making, I'm sure, his coaches scream and grab their headsets. But it usually worked somehow. Alex Orji doesn't really do that right now. He, as you said, just kind of, it's not a scramble drill. It's not, busted place, everyone just go deep. Mm-hmm. It's just, okay, well, go pick up whatever yards. And he threw better than he has in previous games. He had a long run of 15 yards and 12 yards total of running on the day, 9 carries, 12 yards with a long of 15. So then the running game has kind of disappeared there. He was okay. I thought it was almost a little condescending the way Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt were talking about him. He threw like a 4-yard out, and Gus Johnson said, "Oh, he steps into that throw." It's like, well, that's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to step into a throw. Like, yeah, it's like talking to a 4-year-old. Oh, look at you. You can tie your own shoes now. Good job. They had a play where he went through 3 reads on this play. Like, yeah, that's what quarterbacks do at the college level. Are you kidding me? So it was a little condescending. He hit a couple throws that were more downfield, as you said, than he has before. He looked a little more comfortable. I think a lot of that might have had to do with getting Colston Loveland back. He feels like he is the first read on a lot of plays, and he was the leading receiver, 4 catches, 41 yards on 5 targets. But then he the 5th target there that he didn't catch. He was running down the seam wide open. And it was like, Tony, the opposite of when a quarterback throws the receiver open. Colston Loveland's running wide open down the hash mark, and Alex Orji's throw drifts about 2 yards in from the hash mark directly into the safety who intercepts it. So I still think the whole idea of downfield passing is probably a little bit speculative more for Michigan than something that's really genuinely a part of their offense right now. And that makes it hard, because then when it's 3rd and 1, I don't think Minnesota really respected. There was a 3rd and 1 late in the game, and Minnesota basically did the old equivalent of running the EA Sports college football, just running the punt block on 3rd and 1, and they got someone through and stuffed Mullings in the backfield before he could really get going. Until there is a real actual threat of a pass on a consistent basis or a downfield pass, teams are just not going to respect things, and so that just leaves Kalel Mullings having to do everything the hard way, where there was a 4th and 1 they went for early in the game, and he got stuffed in the back, and he was deep in their own end. It was probably their own 35 or something like that. Kalel Mullings gets stuffed in the backfield and just kind of keeps pushing and moves the pile and picks up the first down. But in the run game, they're doing everything on difficult mode right now because the passing game continues to just not be a factor.
It was also bizarre. You're talking about that 4th and 1 from their own 35, 36, and Kalel Mullings had to spin out and get it by a yard. Earlier in the game, they had a 4th and 1 from their own 45, and they didn't go for it. And they punted it instead. And it's like, where's the difference? What's the difference? Because Sharon Moore, we know, likes to go for it on that 4th and 1, and they usually do pretty well. Maybe, I don't know, when they got stuffed earlier, I'm not sure if that was why or if they got stuffed later on. And he was like, you know what, let's just back off on this one. But 155 yards rushing for Michigan, 43 carries, 3.6 yard average is not good. And it's very, I guess, typical of a hard-fought game between two teams that are going to try to run the ball and shorten the game. But they didn't get their home runs that they've gotten to punch up the numbers. 27-yarder, as I mentioned. You look at the receivers, again, they were targeted 5 times, the wide receivers for 35 yards in this one, 5 yards a target, which actually raises their average a little bit. Kendrick Bell getting in there for 2 catches and 24 yards. Colston Loveland, you said, is back. 4 catches, 41 yards. The long completion of the day is just a 16-yard, the 16-yarder. And the downfield passing is, as you said, non-existent. The only pass he threw beyond 16 yards downfield was intercepted. And yeah, he didn't throw him open. He threw him closed on that one. Minnesota, there are a couple times where they could have brought more people into into the box and didn't, and Michigan was able to pick up some short yardages. You just wonder what happens if you just do not respect the pass at all and make him throw the ball, and legitimately you just have cover zero and you've got everybody in man coverage. Can Michigan, one, beat the defender across from them in the passing game, and two, can then Alex Orji hit that guy? Because you're asking for two things there. The first is maybe likely. The second is maybe likely. And as we know, when you start parlaying maybe likelies together, it makes everything less likely. And I wonder what Washington does this week. Because even if you do give up some plays in the passing game, aren't you going to take that over just this methodical, never getting the ball back type of thing? Because coaches I don't like taking chances. But in this instance, it's almost like Michigan is taking the larger chance by throwing the ball rather than the defense taking a chance and forcing Michigan to throw.
Right. Letting Michigan run the ball down the field, down your throat, keeps your offense off the field. And that's the surest way that Michigan would win. You always want to look at how would the other team choose to play the game and then make them not play the game, make them play left-handed. Michigan being able to run the ball down the field is how Michigan would choose to play the game and choose to win the game. And really, it seems broadly like that's really the only way that Michigan can win the game is force turnovers, get short fields, run the ball. That's kind of their only way they've really been successful this year. So if you can just hang on to the ball on offense and not let them run the ball down your throat on defense, it feels like that's going to be your surest path to a win against Michigan. You look at the Michigan wide receivers, they have just continued to just be a complete non-factor this year. Kendrick Bell was the leading receiver among the wide receivers this week. 3 targets, 2 catches, 24 yards. Tyler Morris had 1 catch for 11 yards, had a touchdown, but that's it. And Donovan Edwards, non-factor in the passing game, 2 catches, 1 yard. It was Colston Loveland, it was Marlon Klein. The 2 tight ends had 5 catches for 50 yards, and that was half of the receptions and probably about 60% of the passing yards. And there's just one way that Michigan can win right now, and that is forcing turnovers, giving their offense a short field, and running the ball. And Donovan Edwards continues to just not do much on the ground every week. And it's just sort of Kalel Mullings. They run the Kalel Mullings do something cool play about as often as they can. And he is doing his absolute best, but they really have to overcome a lot from the line. The defense, though, the defense was fantastic for the most part on Saturday. With the understanding they're playing without Josiah Stewart and playing without Will Johnson, they got the defensive front especially 5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss. Mason Graham had a couple sacks. TJ Guy had a sack. Rayshawn Benny had a half a sack with Derek Moore. Kenneth Grant had a sack. That poor left tackle, it feels like every week there is a main character on the opposing team's offensive line, and he is not having a very good time. It was one of the tackles for USC last week. This week it was Minnesota's left guard who, about halfway through the second quarter, I think he just wanted to dig a hole and just crawl up in it because things kept not going well for him. This is a very, very good defensive front. They have, this is a team that has some elite players on defense, and they were without one of them on Saturday. But boy, if you don't throw a pick 6 to Will Johnson, which they didn't because he wasn't playing, that takes away one of Michigan's best paths to scoring, it seems like, this season. That has been I don't know where Will Johnson ranks in terms of the Michigan team overall in terms of scoring this year, but he's got to be top 5 or 6 probably. He's probably ahead of how many wide receivers have 2 touchdown receptions for Michigan this year, and Will Johnson has 2 on defense. So it feels like the pathway for Michigan to win these games is so narrow that if teams, you have to assume teams are going to adjust to that, right? That it's just make them throw the ball, force them to throw the ball. Don't let them run for 4 yards a carry, 5 yards a carry, make them throw the ball, and just don't make the big mistake on offense. You don't need to be dominant offense. You just need to not make the big mistake on offense or special teams, and you're probably in not bad shape.
So Will Johnson is third on the team in touchdowns with 2. Donovan Edwards is second in touchdowns with 3, and then Kalel Mullings has 6. Dominic Zavada, the kicker, is the second leading scorer. So Will Johnson is fourth on the team in scoring. He has as many touchdowns, too, as the rest of the Michigan wide receivers combined, because Tyler Morris and Samaj Morgan each have 1 touchdown. And Tyler Morris got his in this game, which was a little pass, a little kind of a screenish rollout pass that was thrown to the line of scrimmage that he took 10 yards in and hit the pylon. Before we get real back to the defense real quick, I was just looking to see the last time Michigan, they had 241 yards of total offense and they won. The last time they had that few number of yards and won was in the 2011 season in the bowl game against Virginia Tech. They won 23-20 with 184 yards of total offense. The last time they had fewer yards than they did in this one was the 2020 season. They lost in that game, and then you had to go back to like the 2017 season. So the last time they're doing some rare things with, like last week they won without any first downs passing, and I had to go way back to find out when the last time they even had no first downs passing, and I don't think I could find a number. And then this week they're doing something they haven't done since 2011. So give them some credit, but also realize what they're doing right now is very rare, and it's probably not going to continue, which is why they're going to have to continue getting better and improving. And then back to the defense in terms of like Zeke Berry, you mentioned his fumble, his strip. We saw something similar with Ohio State and Jordan Hancock, but Zeke Berry has played really pretty well these last couple of weeks and is, trying to live up to the role that Mike Sainristil played there as the nickel, and he's doing a pretty good job. I thought it was interesting, Tom, comparing this game to the Ohio State-Michigan State game. Michigan comes out and plays nickel for much of this game against a Minnesota team that's going to play a lot of 12 personnel and is going to try to run the ball. And Ohio State came out in a 4-3 against a similar kind of offensive attack. I just think it's interesting that people see Michigan, this physical thing, but they've been a nickel 4-2-5 for years and years now, and Ohio State comes out in a rare 4-3 to try and stop a similar offense. I just thought it was interesting because Michigan seemed to do just fine with their nickel back stopping the run in this one.
Yeah, I think that my takeaway from that is Ohio State should probably have Jordan Hancock on the field more if they're not thrilled about the play of their linebackers, which I don't think they are. So I think my takeaway on that one is much more on the Ohio State side of things than the Michigan side of things. We should briefly mention the Michigan special teams. We talked about the block punt earlier. That was a huge play in the game. That was the one that set up that 11-yard touchdown pass to Tyler Morris. They also, Dominic Zavada, 2 field goals again. This is, I don't want everyone to think that we're trying to downplay Michigan and say, this is good teams win these games. So Michigan continues to win these games, to find ways to win these games. One of the ways you find ways to win these games is you have a kicker who lines up for a 53-yarder and you kind of go, yeah, he's going to make this. Of course he's going to make this. Why wouldn't he make this? He made his 53-yarder. Minnesota missed theirs, and that was the difference in the game. They won by 3. So having that kicker is, I compared this to Trestle Ball a couple weeks ago or a week ago. That's what Michigan is doing right now. They are playing we don't have a very good quarterback. We can't really throw the ball. We have to kind of run it. We don't have an incredible running game. We're not running for 400 yards a game or anything like that. So we're just going to play field position. We're going to get stops on defense. You're going to be opportunistic with turnovers. You're going to get yourself some short fields. You cash those in. You make the most of your opportunities. And that's how you win. And that works to a point. I think the difference is you look at some of those Trestle teams in the 2000s. I think a lot of those were much more talented than this Michigan team is, especially in the offensive side of the ball. Jim Tressel's playing Trestle ball with Ted Ginn and Santonio Holmes at wideout. Santonio Holmes is not walking through that door in Ann Arbor right now. I regret to inform all of our friends up in Ann Arbor. That is not the caliber of wide receiver that Michigan has. That is not a Troy Smith you have playing quarterback for you. That's not even a 2004 Troy Smith that you have playing quarterback for you. That's not a Todd Beckman you have playing quarterback for you. It is a team that has to do things this one way. And you made a night boat joke on, I don't know, was it after the post game show or something like that, where it's like, well, as long as there continue to be canals or fjords or whatever, this will continue to be a winning format for Michigan. And well, I guess the good news is, Tony, they're playing this weekend in a stadium that's on a lake. So maybe they can keep it going another week.
There you go. You mentioned the trestle ball stuff. We saw something in this one that I haven't necessarily seen since trestle ball, which was Minnesota at the end of the half throws a Hail Mary. It gets caught at like the 3-yard line with about 2 seconds left. They have no timeouts. And they transition from offense to the kicking team coming on the field and getting off a 20-yard field goal, and it's good. And the guy who caught the pass is one of the edge blockers. Like, it's good coaching, and we saw that once with Ohio State where they send everybody in. You're running in, you've got to get set, and you've got to get that ball kicked before the clock even starts. So credit to them for that one. Michigan did give up a couple of punt returns to Coy Parrish, the freshman safety that Ohio State desperately wanted, a 62-yarder and a 20-yarder. So that's a little something to watch because they've been pretty good in the kick coverage aspect of things. But boy, this is one of those where I just wonder how much the defense is wearing down throughout the course of a game, because it sure seems like the points would seem to indicate that things are getting more difficult as the game goes on for those guys. And how long can they keep this up? And is there going to be a point this season where nothing happens good in the first half, and then that gets compounded with all of the typical stuff in the second half? And well, maybe that's what, maybe I just described the Texas game, but can that happen against other teams as well? They've got some good teams coming up, but could that happen against a Washington? I still think, and I've been thinking since, maybe week 2 or something, I think they're going to lose at Illinois, and it's going to be just an ugly fist fight. But as long as Illinois doesn't do what USC and Minnesota have done, I feel like they should win that one, because if you just don't give the ball over, and Illinois has done that in the past, they've been pretty good about it this year. I think that's going to be a tough one for Michigan.
I think that's going to be a tough one for Michigan. I mean, we haven't seen this team go on the road yet, so that's going to be. They're through the easy part of their schedule, and they're 4-1. But now you got to go on the road to Washington. You got to go on the road to Illinois. You got Michigan State at home, and every Michigan fan knows that that's always a little bit of a rock fight, that game. You got Oregon at home. That's going to be a challenge. Indiana on the road that's going to be potentially a real challenging game for them. Northwestern at home, and then Ohio State on the road. You look at it, they're 4-1. They need a win this weekend. You really need to be 5-1 coming out of that Washington game, because that Illinois game is a losable game. That Oregon game is a losable game. The Indiana game is a losable game. The Ohio State game is a losable game. That gets you to 5 losses. If you somehow slip up against Michigan State, or you slip up against Washington, this is not out of the realm of possibility that they miss a bowl this year. I think you're going to win some of these coin flips, so I think they're going to be okay. But like I said earlier, this is a game where I think I came out of the USC game last weekend thinking, okay, maybe this is like an 8-4, 9-3 Michigan team, and then watching them play Minnesota. I know Will Johnson was out. I know Josiah Stewart was out. Watching them play Minnesota, it was a win, and I think I'm now more in the 7-5, 8-4 than the 8-4, 9-3. And when you're playing so many fine margin games like this, if you're in that 7-5, 8-4 camp, and a couple of those wins are going to be close wins, your one call, your one slip, your one penalty, your one dropped pass, whatever it is, one punt that doesn't get blocked, one ball that doesn't get ripped out, away from being 6-6. You're playing a very, very fine margin thing. And all these things are on a spectrum. They're not, it's not like they're definitely going to finish with this exact record. It's like, well, depends. Do they get the turnover? Do they get the diving catch on the sideline that's inbounds versus out of bounds. That's the stuff we're talking about. That could be the difference between 6-6 and 7-5 and 8-4. I think I'm back to thinking 9-3 is probably not on the table this year.
Yeah, I mean, you said it at the earlier in the show where this didn't feel like this game should have been one of those coin flip games. Like they came into this game 1-0 in coin flip games, USC being the only coin flip game that they've played to this point. I didn't know this was supposed to be a coin flip game. So that kind of opens up even more questions. We're just fluctuating as, Michigan beats USC. They could get to 10 maybe somehow. And then they nearly lose this one. It's like, how are they even going to get to 7? But when you see the way they're doing it, it's like, well, this shouldn't have happened. I don't know that they should be 2-0 right now in these last 2 games, and yet they are. So you wonder at some point, is reality going to set in? Are they not going to make the breaks? And are they also not going to get some breaks in there? I'm not sure Washington is the program to make that happen, but we will see. Washington goes in as a favorite against Michigan, which is, I don't know. I wouldn't have thought that before the season, but I was actually a little surprised to even see it when I looked earlier in the show. So that is a 7:30 p.m. Eastern kick Saturday night. Tom, anything else before we get out of here? I'm just looking through my notes. I think I got most of the stuff that I wanted to throw in there, other than they're trying to throw to Donovan Edwards a little bit more in terms of getting him outside, even though he only had 2 targets, I think 2 catches for a yard. So that's not going great either.
No, it feels like, you know how they can update the players' ratings during the course of the season? I wonder if there are people at EA going like, can we swap Kalel Mullings in on the cover of this game instead? Because it feels like very clearly everyone knows who Michigan's number 1 running back it is, and it's not Donovan Edwards.
Well, and I think, I'm not sure if this was Mullings' first start, but he did get the start in this one. Donovan Edwards was targeted 3 times, 2 catches, 1 yard total, 15 yards after the catch. To give you an idea how far in the backfield he was getting those passes, he had 15 yards after the catch and only finished with 1 yard. Michigan right now 14th in the conference in third down conversion. So again, load up to stop the run on first and second, and then watch them punt. And that's pretty much all you have to do. And one last quick thing. So I'm watching this game on the DVR on the computer, and it's the 60-minute version from the Big Ten Network. So you can fast forward, like you can hit a little fast forward and it goes 30 seconds. There were several times where I hit fast forward 30 seconds and it goes all the way through Michigan's possession, to give you an idea of how quickly those possessions were going. So there you have it. If you're watching on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up, hit the bell to be notified when we go live. It is football season. We are going live quite often. And of course, you'll be notified when we drop new videos like this one. And if you can find this at any of your podcast platforms of choice, just search Buckeye Weekly Podcast, search Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tom's show, as well as the daily show there. And find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a premium member. It is the best way to support what we do. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.